Hello and welcome to the latest video interview here on Smart Cities World, this time brought to you in conjunction with Cloudera and IBM Storage. I'm Luke Antoniou, Senior Editor at Smart Cities World, and today you find us with Anthony Behan, Managing Director for Communications, Media and Entertainment at Cloudera. Welcome along, Anthony.
Thank you very much, Luke.
So it's good to have you with us, and we've spoken a couple of times in the past now about 5G, its rollout and implementation in cities. And if you're tuning in at home and you've not heard our podcast together or read Anthony's guest opinion, then I do recommend taking a look at those on Smart Cities World, just to provide a little more context to what's coming up here. And you can find links to those in the description below as well. But with that in mind, let's just dial back a little and set the scene. So Anthony, on your side, where do you think 5G can make the biggest difference in cities based on your experience so far?
I think, sometimes we can get a little bit frosty or sanguine about sort of 5G as another, step on from 4G, from 3G, and things get a little bit faster and latency goes down a little bit and maybe the quality of the network improves a little bit. And certainly we're going to see some quality improvements. But I think 5G promises something that we haven't really seen before, and that's genuine industrial scale Internet of Things. And in the city, that just means a more seamlessly connected experience. For those of us who live in cities and who work and operate in cities and who move around cities and do stuff in cities, we're often consuming services on the go. We're often consuming services that are disconnected and not speaking to one another. We have different services in our phones. We have different services on different devices. We have different services in kiosks and in public transport and things like that. These things are going to start to talk to each other a lot more. The environment that we live in is going to become more seamless. It's going to become better connected, and we're genuinely going to start to see that. And I think that's good for all of us. We'll see a lot more interconnectedness in our cities. It'll make a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are the trends that we've been seeing in recent years. What I wanted to do today is just to break that down a little further and really focus on the data management side of that 5G rollout, whether that is in the collection, processing, analysis, or some other facet of that process. And really looking at Cloudera's role in the rollout of 5G into cities and how you underpin that. What is that data management challenge like, and how are you helping cities and obviously the telcos that are actually managing the rollout to overcome some of those challenges?
At Cloudera, we like to talk about edge to AI, just collecting the data isn't enough. We're going to do something with it. And along the way, there's a whole series of things that we need to be smart about. And if you start at the edge, right? So we've got all of these networks that are connecting all of these devices and things and people and processes to the network. We've got to make some pretty clear decisions at the edge about how we're going to deal with all of that data. Because there is an enormous amount of that data coming through. In 4G networks and in kilometers zone, there's up to 2,000 devices could be connected concurrently. In a 5G space of similar size, you're talking about 2 million devices. So that kind of capacity means extraordinary amounts of data. And we simply can't take all of that data and just shove it into a database somewhere for somebody to run a report on. It's not how it works anymore. We've got to get really smart, push the analytics to the edge, take in the data and make some really smart decisions at that point about how we aggregate the data, what data we dispose of and what data we keep. Maybe masking can be done at the edge, maybe anonymization could be done at the edge, all sorts of different processes that can be done there. Next thing we've got to do is to push that data from the edge into the places where it's going to be needed. So is it going to go to the public cloud? Is it going to go to a private cloud environment? Is it going to go into an analytics space? Is it going to go into a data dump for AI training or something like that? And on the fly, what other processes do we need to do? We need to think about, security and privacy and those kinds of things. Then we've got to store it. We've got to persist, and storage is really, really important. And I know partners like IBM and others are developing extraordinary storage solutions that can be much more distributed, that can be divided up into different workloads and different units and so on. And there's all sorts of storage strategies that we have to think about. And then we need to think about applications. And applications are, there's visualizations and there's reports, and then there's things like AI and predictive analytics and all these advanced things. But, we're not going to be prescriptive about the kinds of applications that data platforms can facilitate. We've got to grow, we've got to enable all sorts of innovation to be built on top of that. And that means open APIs. It means exposing all of that data in consumable ways to partners and ecosystems that make the city work. So you collect all of the data from all of your vehicles that are moving around the place, all of your cars, all of your trucks, all of your delivery vehicles, your buses, everything moving around the city. You collect it from your kiosks, from your retail stores, from all these instrumented devices, from your lighting, from your all sorts of bits and pieces that are connected to the network in the city. Collect all of that data, and then you organize it in such a way that it can be consumed in a safe, privacy compliant way, and so on, that can be injected into all sorts of different applications, ultimately to make the city work better.
Yeah, absolutely. You can really see the scope when we talk about this. And as you said, the sheer number of connected devices that we can collect that data from now. Yeah. And you spoke right at the beginning about edge to AI.
Yeah.
Taking AI first, where does that really fit into the data management and processing puzzle? And what specific branches of AI, when we look at machine learning, for example, do you think are going to make the biggest impact there?
I think we want to think about automation. Right? That's probably the most significant application of AI in the short term. So AI is about making smart decisions based on the data, but automating those decisions. Not just creating alarms and sending alerts to different stakeholders when thresholds are breached and so on. That's kind of, advanced analytics 2.0, if you like, from 5 years ago. When we think about AI, we're really thinking about automating all of those processes. One of the key trends that's happening in computing and connectivity at the same time as we see, 5G launching and this journey to cloud, is the virtualization of network infrastructure. And so the network itself is being virtualized, which means that, where previously network functions would have been attached to physical devices and appliances, because now they're virtualized, we're going to see an explosion in the number of network elements, and they have to be managed in an automated way. And so we have to get really, really smart about how, if a network element fails, we can just discard it. We can just burn it down and spin up a new one, right? That suddenly becomes possible. But you can't do that with human beings. We simply don't have enough people on the planet to support that kind of process. So you got to automate it. So you got to be really, really smart. You got to learn about what a failure really means from the data. And that's the part of your analytical process. You got to learn what a failure really looks like, learn what to do in the event of failure. So, spin up another device and connect it to the other bits and pieces and so on. Create that hyper availability that you expect from a telecommunications network, albeit in a virtualized environment.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, we definitely don't have the manpower required to do that job manually anymore. But the applications that we're seeing, automation is going to be key to actually moving forward with these technologies. Yeah. And looking ahead.
Sorry, just to add one thing. It's not just about the technical IT networky GORPy automation. It's also about making chatbots more clever. It's also about making your inquiries about what bus is coming next more accurate and more resilient and more responsive, making the city become much more empathetic to what we're trying to achieve in our digital lives. So it's not just the GORPy technical stuff in the network. It's also real people-facing applications that are going to become so much better.
Yeah, 100%. And that's something that I think we all welcome as citizens, even though we talk about this on a technical level, as kind of a part of this smart city facing industry. We are first and foremost people that live in those urban spaces and in those environments that are going to benefit from the rollout of these technologies as well. We are living in an environment that is always on all the time, and anything less than that is really falling by the wayside now. So that is going to be absolutely crucial as we move forward.
Yeah. No, look, I mean, we need to think about human-centric transformation. That's really, really important. Cities are for people, and the management of cities, the optimization of cities, the transformation of cities is all about making the experience of living in a city for people better. And if we're not doing that, then something's not right, right? So that has to be that has to be our North Star.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we believe over at SmartCitiesWorld as well. So, the citizens are the most important thing, and making sure that we're making cities as livable as they can be. Yeah. The thing I wanted to touch on next, looking slightly further ahead and future gazing just a little, I suppose, is firstly the role of edge processing at the moment, and the way that processing data at the edge has really changed the game for cities recently. But then also what comes after that, and whether the next step in that journey is reliant on another new generation of connectivity in the way that we've moved from 4G to 5G.
I think connectivity is increasingly going to be distributed and detached from personal devices. Right. So if you think about how we connect right now, invariably it is through our mobile phones, right? It's we got watches and a few other devices like that, but they're all personal devices, right? And so when we pay, we use our phones to pay, and we tap getting onto a bus sometime. We access services through apps on the phone and so on. I think we need to look to things like secure identity assurance distribution. I'm not sure if that's a technical phrase or not. Maybe I just invented it, but if you follow me, I'm thinking about the process of identity assurance. Can that be detached from the physical device and actually distributed into public devices, right? So that I could go to a kiosk at a bus station, look at it, and it would recognize me and present me with my services and applications, right? Rather than a generic set of bus timetables or something like that, right? So once that begins to happen, you start to become less attached to the device, and less attached to the personal device, and you start to see all sorts of service possibilities beginning to emerge. And that's one thing that I can see happening, particularly in the city context.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that sounds like a great future, but with that comes obviously privacy concerns as well. Well, I suppose one question I'd ask there is how edge processing there can actually help to tackle that.
How edge processing can happen. So, if we get to a position where we've got secure distributed identity assurance, and we can distribute that to the edge, we can use telecommunications networks and wide area telecommunications networks that have security thresholds that are better than, for example, public Wi-Fi networks, as domains within which that identity can be secured. And so what I mean is you're looking to the service provider to provide not only to the telecommunications service provider to provide not only the connectivity, but also enhanced security services at the edge to facilitate that kind of engagement with the network. So you're no longer if you think about it as a chart from the device on one side to the service all the way over here on the other side, whether that's a bus network or a retailer or whatever the service happens to be, you're actually just pushing the capability that you've got sitting in the device into the edge node, particularly around assurance. And I'm just thinking about the iPhone with its facial recognition function, right? That if you could box off that function and just push it into the edge of the network rather than having it dependent on the device, that would be a huge leap forward. But it's a big risk. Privacy concerns you mentioned already, that's really, really important. But security, arguably more important in that context. Because the minute I look at my iPhone and it recognizes me, I suddenly have access to PayPal and I have access to, credit card services, banking services, all sorts of different services that are specific to me. So, clearly there's a lot of risk there. And but I think that's where we're heading, because it's within the gift of telecommunication service providers with that edge capacity to deliver that kind of value, and it's a very sticky kind of value. It means that you're far more likely to rely on a nationally bounded and regulated service provider like a telco to give you that kind of a service, rather than let's just say a satellite operator out of California delivering services worldwide.
Yeah, let's put it that way.
Not naming anyone in particular.
No, absolutely. I mean, it sounds like a kind of fantastical future, but genuinely, when we have these conversations, it doesn't really seem too far flung, too far off. Like you say, we could quite easily go in that direction, and I for one will kind of welcome that. If it would tear me away from my phone for 5 minutes, then that'll be a good thing, I think.
Absolutely. No, look, I mean, William Gibson said that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. The technology that I just talked about is current technology. This is not future technology. The question is how we can get it into wider adoption and distribute it better. And some of the cloud infrastructures that we're seeing, some of the edge capabilities that we're seeing, the network advances that we're seeing are beginning to make that kind of wide scale adoption of those kinds of technologies possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that probably brings us to the end for today, but thank you very much indeed for taking the time out to speak with us. And thanks for those for watching at home as well. Like I said earlier, you can find out more from Anthony and Cloudera on this subject by taking a look at those previous bits of content using the links below. But for now, thank you very much, and I'm sure we'll see you next time.